and I will hand over the moderation to Siddhi. But before that, I would like to introduce her. So Siddhi is our evangelist at Women Who Code, and she is an undergraduate student in Delhi and an upcoming software engineer at JP Morgan. So she's already quite accomplished and doing great. So yeah, over to you, Siddhi, then.
Thanks, Ashmi. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And thank you everyone for joining us. I would now like to introduce our panelists for the event. So first we have Glenn Jocher. So Glenn founded Ultralytics in 2014 to lead the US National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency's antineutrino analysis efforts, which culminated in the miniTimeCube experiment and the world's first ever Global Antinutrino Map. He believes that artificial general intelligence is the best solution for mankind to understand the universe and our place in it, and is building the world's best vision AI as a building block to a future AGI. It's a pleasure to have you here, Glenn, and I'm looking forward to hearing your views in the panel. Next up, we have Khuyen Tran. So Khuyen Tran is a prolific writer on Medium. She has more than 20,000 subscribers. She has published more than 170 data science articles, and she shares more than 700 daily data science tips on Data Science Simplified, and she runs a successful YouTube channel with more than 2,000 subscribers. Her current mission is to educate data scientists on optimal engineering practices for data science projects. And it's amazing to have you here, Khuyen, and it's also amazing to see that you share your knowledge on all these public platforms. And our last panelist for today is Marcelo. I hope this is right. So Marcelo is a software engineer and a passionate open source software developer. He dedicates his free time to maintaining Ubicorn and Starlet, which are two popular web frameworks, and contributing to the thriving Fast API community. Thanks to his deep expertise in Fast API, Marcelo has earned the well-deserved title of Fast API expert. He's always eager to learn and improve, and he pursues best practices and innovative solutions to enhance projects in every possible way. It's a pleasure to have you here, Marcelo. And again, I'm looking forward to learning a lot from you from this session. So that's our panelists for today. And I guess I will kickstart my session by asking our panelists to share about their journey in STEM and what motivated them to showcase their skills to like a wider community. So Glenn, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So hey, everybody, thank you for having me. So my name is Glenn Jocher. I'm the founder at Ultralytics, and most famously, we're known for our YOLO models, which are super popular in AI. But I got started in particle physics, and I had a bit of a journey since when I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a pilot. And when I first took my flight class, I went to a Naval Academy in the United States in Annapolis. And it turned out I was terrified of flying. So I dropped out, and I continued my engineering career though. And this is when I started learning to code. And I eventually got into particle physics. It really fascinated me. And the idea that we could really unravel the mysteries of the universe really latched onto me. This is when I first started really getting into coding, really getting into AI. And from there, I migrated over into a much more popular space, which is the vision AI space. And so these days, AI is a real big topic, and I'm trying to contribute to the field on the vision side. So models like ChatGPT are really popular for language, but there's another vision side too. And part of the most rewarding aspect of the coding I've been doing is the open source nature and the fact that I really started kind of as a self-taught outsider. So for me, it's really powerful that anybody can pick up a computer, start coding, and really create amazing products and have a big impact. And for me, it's a real democratization of what we can all do. Not just if you have a real formal education, if you're at a very big company with a lot of resources, but really anybody these days can go out, they can find the resources they need online, teach themselves simple languages like Python, and through the power of open source, put their work out there and really start to make a difference and create products and create tools that can be used all around the world for amazing things, like our YOLO models are these days.
Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for sharing that. And it's you have had like a very interesting journey. So Marcelo, would you like to share now?
Sure. So, well, Well, actually, I started, I finished university in 2019. And then I decided to, I applied to Europe and I just got a job in France. So I actually wanted to come to the Netherlands where I am right now, but I got this job in France and then I went there. And then at some point, the second month that I was there, I was asked the question to choose the web framework that I wanted to use for one web services that we had at the time. And then the options that my boss gave me were the most famous web frameworks at the time in Python, so Django and Flask. And then, well, I decided to use another one, which is FastAPI. And then my boss was okay, and then I got involved with the project, mainly because no one knew about it. So I felt like I had the responsibility to share with the team the knowledge about something that I introduced. So that's basically how everything started. And then at some point, helping on GitHub issues and then starting with my pull requests, I noticed that I wanted a bit more than what I was helping, because I was mainly answering questions. So I wanted to contribute with code. And then what I did is I started to go down a bit on the dependencies of FastAPI. So I started helping with UveCore, which is the web server that runs applications that you can build with FastAPI. And then sometime later, I started with Starlet, which is a direct dependency of FastAPI. So what motivated me is that I was in the first conference last year in May at PyCon Italy. And then, I was watching the talks and I noticed that it's very cool, and and then I wanted to do the same. So I started applying to submitting talks to talk, and then that's how it started.
That's amazing, Marcelo. And I noticed that in your journey, it was more so like you just coming up and owning of like what you want to do, right? Like you wanted to like know more about FastAPI. So that's how you that's where you went, and even with the talk. So it's really interesting. And that's like a great takeaway, I think, for the audience. So moving on to Khuyen. So would you like to share your journey now?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Khuyen Chang. I'm a machine learning engineer at Ocelot Consulting. My journey, I think, is pretty interesting. So I was very passionate about math. I want to find a job that allows me to do something with it, not necessarily be a math professor. So I joined this math conference, and the speaker was, he used to be a PhD in math. And at the time, he was a data engineer, and he showed a lot of passion for his work, and mentioned about how he just loved to go to work every day. And I came to talk to him, and he introduced me to data science. And that's the first time that I heard about the field. At the time, since I already know Python, and I consider myself pretty good at math, so I start to dig into books about data science and courses. I try to dedicate 1 hour per day to learn data science. And what I found is, it's okay. I didn't really enjoy it that much. I went on Kaggle, do some projects, and take some courses. I found that the knowledge that I learned, it just didn't stick. So I found another way to learn new knowledge, that is to start writing what I learned. And I found this is a much more efficient way to learn, because when I write down what I learned, is kind of reinforce my knowledge, and it also helped me identify the gap in my knowledge. And since it's very helpful for me, I just start to write about everything that I learned. And so I dedicate tons of hours per week so that I can publish 2 to 3 articles at the beginning of my journey. So that's kind of the motivation why I share my skills until now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Khuyen. And I guess that's a great segue into my next question, and I'll shoot it back at you, Khuyen, which is what were some of the practices or maybe strategies that you employed for promoting and sharing your technical content, with the fact that you have a great successful channel, you have a large following on different public platforms. So what inspired you to share your data science knowledge journey through these public platforms, and what were some practice or strategies that you employed for that?
Yeah, so there's two parts of this question, which is what inspired me and what strategies I use. I'll answer the first part first. And so the motivation, it first starts with me trying to share my knowledge so that I can retain new knowledge. And then from there, I start to, as I shared tons of articles, I start to have offers from companies on LinkedIn. And so I got some new data science jobs thanks to that. So that's one thing. So to expose myself to potential employers. But besides that, the stronger motivation is it gives me an excuse to learn something new and try some cool projects, because a lot of time when you are in a job, it's very easy for you just to do what required in the job and not having the time to learn something new. So I find that just by dedicated myself to writing every day, it really helps with learning new knowledge. And the reason why I start a YouTube channel was because at that time, I found that a lot of YouTube videos are pretty long and it takes a while to get to the point that I want to learn, and I found myself skip a lot. So I want to create a channel where, you know, people can get what they want right away, and it will be extremely short. And the final reason why I share content is I believe in the snowball effect, in a way that what you do right now, it might not seem much. You have a couple of views, a couple of likes, your followers are low. It doesn't seem much, and it seems to take a lot of effort, but over time, it will become something big. So because that's what I believe in, and that's what I saw happen a lot of, because I have been sharing for 2 years. I developed a large followers on LinkedIn. I believe that that apply to other platforms as well. And the strategy for me to promote my content is to just write a lot. I think a lot of people focus too much on SEO and all those things. But for me, I think if you have good quality content and you post frequently, you will eventually have a large followers.
All right. Thanks, Khuyen, for sharing that. And it's really interesting that you talked about essentially that you were really dedicated to your content and you were producing like really authentic content, along with the fact that you found like a niche for your content, right? Like you were producing like small form, like short videos so that people could like learn from it fast. And that's really inspiring. So I would now like to move to Marcelo. And Marcelo, I'm curious that what motivates you to like contribute to open source projects like Ubicon and Starlet, and how has that and like what are the practices or strategies that you have used to like promote your technical content with others in the field, considering that you majorly are focused in like open source projects?
Yeah, you're probably gonna have to repeat the second question. Okay, for the first one, what motivates me for, well, at least for the beginning, was that I was missing. So I was helping on Fast API, and I was kind of missing this idea of helping in the coding part. But that was just the beginning of why I started. What motivated me is basically that I learn a lot from what I do, because most of the time I have no idea, or right now I do have some ideas of what's happening, but at the beginning was like an issue was created and I'm looking at it and I couldn't understand it at all. I looked at the code and I couldn't understand at all as well. So it was a process that took some time to get into what was happening mainly on Ucorn, because of the complexity of being a web server. I couldn't understand, so it was challenging, and also I was learning all the time, like trying to understand what people were saying. What is a bug exactly? Is this a bug? So it was kind of understanding basically what was happening there. Yeah, and also, I mean, it's right now. I'm happy that there's a lot of people using it, but what motivated me from the whole time was that I got the opportunity to learn a lot about it. And the second question was?
Sure. The second question is, what are some practices or strategies that you use so that you can promote your technical content with others in the field?
Yeah, so I mainly use, well, the platform that I use mainly is Twitter, and that's what I've been using since some time ago. I've started to create blog posts as well, and I have 3 videos on YouTube, but it's just the beginning. Yeah, and that's what I have right now.
That's really interesting, Marcelo. Thanks for sharing that. So I would like to move to Glenn now. So Glenn, I have the same question for you. Like, first is that what are some practices or strategies that you use to promote your technical content? And like another question is that what role do you think that individual contributors can play in driving innovation in AI? And as you had mentioned about YOLO before, right? So like, how have like contributions and feedback helped shape YOLO?
Sorry, I was on mute there.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a great question. I think, and what I've found out in the last few years is that as you create value for people, they will return that back to you. And we've seen this a lot in YOLO. So the first repositories that I started writing about 3 to 4 years ago started getting more and more popular. And I think one of the main reasons was that when people would ask me a question, I would help them out. They might have a question about how to run something or what settings to use. And I would always pitch in my 2 cents and I'd ask them for feedback. And like what I found is that if you do this, then you're creating value for other people. And anytime you start doing that, this is sort of the basis for creating like really a helpful relationship to the community and for the community to start investing back into your product. And so the amazing thing for open source for me, and the huge contrast with my previous work, which was on secret projects for the government, was that the open source community is so collaborative. People will submit a pull request. So at first, when I started using open source work, my immediate reaction was a bit of fear. I thought, okay, when people are going to steal my secret sauce and they're going to kind of like run off with like my amazing ideas and like use it for themselves. And in reality, it's been the opposite. So in the last 3 years, we've had almost, I think, 450 people that have contributed code improvements to the YOLO model. So the Ultralytics team is really small, and the ML team is even smaller. It's about 3 people right now. So there's 100 times more than that contributing to the work. And of course, they contribute back because we've been so helpful. So in the last few years, I've answered, I think, over 10,000 different issues on the YOLO repositories. And these are typically kind of like complex questions. They're not like a simple yes or no. They're like, can you look at my training results? Can you see how this went? Like, what do you think of this? And so every day I invest maybe like half of my day engaging in these conversations. And this is amazing for 2 reasons. The first is it gives you like a real in-depth understanding of the needs of the community, the pain points, and where you can focus your efforts to get that low-hanging fruit. Since you only have 24 hours in the day, you got to use your time wisely. So the second is that people see you out there and then they develop this feeling of goodwill towards you. And so then they also try and help you. And by helping you with your work, since so many other people are using it, then it creates this virtuous cycle. And this is just something that's like truly amazing in open source and something that can be driven just by one person too. The ML field especially, and I think open source code contributions are a great leveler. So just a single person can be self-taught and can create amazing tools that can compete with the biggest projects from really big companies like Amazon or Google that have thousands of engineers and unlimited funding almost. So it's really encouraging to me to see that effect and to kind of see the community come together behind the project. So.
Thanks for answering that question, Glenn. And we also have an audience question which says that how can we get started with contributing to open source projects? And I'm particularly asking this because you did mention that you had your own apprehensions, right, before like contributing, because you were like, oh, somebody would steal your secret sauce, right? And I feel like for people can it be daunting, and people can have different apprehensions, right? So how can you like, I mean, what advice would you give?
Okay, so I think it's early in my career, I thought that if you had a great idea, that was sort of 80% of the solution, and just getting into place was the other 20%. But in reality, great ideas don't matter without the execution and the effort behind them. And so like an amazing idea is really sort of like a 1% towards your goal. And then the effort and the execution and actually creating that is the other 99%. That's going to take a lot longer and be much more difficult than you thought. And this is where the community can really come in and assist you. But the very first step, especially in machine learning, since it's what's called empirical science, which means that the results are their own answer. So if somebody asks me a question, they're like, Glenn, how is this model going to perform on this data set? Nobody really knows, not even a super expert. And the only way to get that answer is to just do the experiment. And so I guess in American English, we call this getting your hands dirty, which means that you just dive in and you start running your own small experiments. You see how things work. And in this way, you really start to understand. So just like any journey, no matter how long it is, it always starts with a single step. And the same is true in open source, in ML, and in coding. You simply have to just try a little bit. And once you get that down, you try a little more. And if you open source those and you share it with your friends, they can take a look and they might give you some insights. And that's really how it all starts.
That's awesome. And I completely agree that open source, like the collaboration on open source is really great, because I got to learn Flutter by working on open source, and that's a tech stack I had no idea about. So I definitely agree that it has a like potential for a great collaboration. So I'll move on to the next question to the group, which is how can individuals identify their unique strengths to create their own brand? And what strategies can they apply to promote their brand as an individual contributor? Marcelo, can we start with you?
Sure. So actually, I think that what I think about this is more simple than what it might sound. I think you need to try to find what you like. So just like on my example, like putting me as an example, well, it was kind of a situation, right? I introduced the tool on my job, and I started trying to get knowledge about it. But I think the thing is that I actually like to help people. So I was in the GitHub issues all day long, well, working and then on the GitHub issues. But then I wanted to help people over there, and this is how I started. So I wanted to learn. That was something that I liked. So I guess if you try to find the thing that you like I like to do what I was doing. I was helping, basically. I like the technology that I was working on, and I didn't stop. Like I continued to do what I was doing every day, and then at some point, well, it was step by step, right? So every day I was answering stuff, and then I was getting more knowledge and more knowledge. And then I guess this goes together with the second part of the question, like what strategies apply to promote my brand as individual contributor. I think it's the fact that since I was replying a lot of questions, people started to recognize or giving me a bit more credibility of like on my answers itself. So given the history, I replied a lot, and then the new answers that I reply give a bit of like I already have a bit of credibility because of how I helped or how much I helped in the past. So it's kind of I helped, and then people believe me more now. It's basically how it worked.
That's awesome. It's essentially that you were working in like public or open, so people were able to see your contributions, and they were able to see like how you're like contributing to like the team or the project, and I guess that really helps. So I guess that's a great takeaway. And I'll pass the question to Glenn now. So like Glenn, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Marcelo said here. And I think something that I've seen also within the team at Ultralytics is when I started hiring people, like I noticed that they weren't used to this open source, like complete transparency. And there's more of a tendency for people to want to deliver something that is perfect, it's flawless, no problems with it. And this is the opposite of my approach from the beginning. My approach was initially, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done Python before. I'd never used PyTorch or know anything about AI. And so initially my efforts were a lot of failures, just failure after failure. And all of this was just out in public. And I guess you could say it might be very embarrassing, but to succeed at anything, you have to have failed a lot beforehand. And I think this was like really instrumental, was putting those failures out, having people point out what was wrong with those and allowing me to correct that. And so I think having the approach of just taking a small step and letting something break and then fixing it and then proceeding from there, and just always focusing not too far ahead, not so much in 3 months or 6 months what this might look like, but just what you want to get done today, the feature you're building today. And if you just keep adding value to it day after day, then eventually you're going to have something that's pretty amazing. But of course, you can't shortcut to the end. It's a lot of hard work, collaboration, and it's really just a lot of missteps at the beginning, which is completely natural. And I think it's a sign that you're doing something right. If you're attempting something and it's not working, and you're retrying it. That's how you keep going, and that's how you get ahead.
And that's wonderful that you talked about failures and not being afraid of them. So I'll pass this on to Khuyen, and would love to know your thoughts about it.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things that Marcelo and Glenn said. I think first you should, I think it's good if you're gonna create some content, it's good to write something that you are interested in. And at the beginning, don't focus too much on quantity. I saw a lot of people who they first started, hey, I want to start writing article about this topic, but I see that there's tons of topics about it out there, and I don't see why I should write about it. And I often encourage people just write about it, because in a way, for example, when you wanna, as a reader, you might prefer one style over another. So by writing the article based on your understanding, using your words, you create a different article. It's not the same as the things out there. And when I first started writing, I just produce a lot. And my articles at the beginning are, I would say the quality is not great, but I focus on quantity over quality, and it gives me the momentum to keep going. And the same applied with my LinkedIn posts. I started posting on LinkedIn, not because I think I'm an expert in Python or data science. I was inspired to write on LinkedIn because I read a book. I came across a book called Show Your Work by Austin. And he said that people care about the progress of how you get from A to B, not necessarily just the B. So just share your work no matter how dirty it is. So it gives me the motivation to start doing that. And at the beginning, I was very scared, but what you will see is that majority of the time, people are very positive about what you share. And I also think that you should not focus too much about identify your strengths before you get started with writing. As you create more content, you will identify what you're good at and what you're interested in, so that you can focus more on those topics. And yes, that's basically just write a lot and write about what you care about.
That's great, Khuyen, and I'll digress just a little bit. So we have this question from the audience, which says that how do you balance keeping articles informative while still being interesting? So is there an assumption that the interest is already present from the reader when writing? Because you did mention that you focus initially on the quantity and not the quality. So like how do you take care of the interest of the readers in that case?
Can you repeat the last part? How do I take the interest from the readers?
Yes,
Oh,
because
okay.
you're pretty, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay. At the beginning, my articles were very short, but funny enough, a lot of people still really like them. And so a lot of time when you first started, the more you share, the more likely you will be able to write about some topics that your audience might be interested in. If you try to be professional about each article, then the less likely you will produce less in a short amount of time, which give them less chance to discover you. And I did mention that I focus a lot of quantity over quality at the beginning, but if you look at my articles now, it focuses a lot on quality over quantity because I already have a dedicated audience. So I know if I take 1 month or 2 months to publish an article, my audience is still there. And when my article is out there, they will likely, a lot of people will be likely to read my article.
Thanks for sharing that, Khuyen. And again, it's really interesting that with the quantity, you were able to sort of identify and establish a dedicated audience for yourself, and that helped you to like retain the interest for them. So that's really interesting. And I'll move on to the next question for the group, which is how important is networking in building a presence? And what are some effective ways to expand your network? So Glenn, can we start with you?
Yes. So being a technical person, early in my career, I had this false impression that if you just have an amazing idea and you dedicate yourself to it, you can really make it all happen. And the reality is that you need people. People are going to help you in a number of ways, both on the technical side, by word of mouth, also in marketing. And in reality, developing your people skills and collaborating, not just through code, not just on GitHub, but also by face-to-face meetings or remote meetings, or even talks like we're doing like this, is really incredibly important. And I think it's ultimately through those personal connections and through the benefit that you provide people by the service that you do, say in open source, by helping people, that you really start to foster this community and that you really start to eventually derive the benefits from the community that you've created. So in my experience, it's been a virtuous cycle. And of course, I couldn't have done it by myself. As I mentioned before, we have so many contributors on the tech side. And of course, also whenever I meet people and the rest of the team, even though we're small at Ultralytics, together is really what come together to create the end result. So.
Thank you for sharing that, Glenn. Marcelo, I would like to know your thoughts about the same.
Yeah, so the importance of building, the importance of networking. I think, well, I think I wouldn't be here if it wasn't because of the networking that I've created. So, well, that's kind of obvious, but I mean, so I think I exposed myself in some situations. For example, just linking to the second question, effective ways to expand your network. I think I went outside of my box, like my environment, my comfort zone. And then I started to create this kind of link with people. And I think that's what helped me. And I think I would say that's an effective way to build in your network. Talk to people. It doesn't need to be necessarily on conferences, or it can be also online. I think people are I don't know. I feel like people are afraid of talking to people that they don't know, and it's weird on how approachable some people can be. So like I'm very approachable. I reply everything on LinkedIn, even like if a recruiter that send me something that even it doesn't make a like role for front end, even if I don't know anything about front end, like I reply everybody and I talk to everybody, and you can learn a lot of stuff with people that you don't never seen in your life. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Thanks for answering that, Marcelo. And I will plug in a audience question here. So the audience question is that, are there any suggestions on finding a mentor so that I know my learning journey is going somewhere? And this is connected to the fact that you said that, be confident in like connecting with people. It could be on LinkedIn or any other platform. So like, how can like we find like a mentor through that, maybe through our networking? And if we do, then how do we know that our journey is going somewhere? Or like, how do we find like a suitable mentor for ourselves?
Yeah, that's I'm not sure if that's hard, but I was very lucky in my life. On my first job, I got this boss that I still consider him my mentor, and I would say that, well, I hope everybody's lucky and have this entity, this person that is there to give advices on the careers. But to find it, my advice would be what I said previously. Try to talk to those people that doesn't seem very approachable, and try to get a simple call. It's that easy. You just say, "Can we have a call? 15 minutes." Is like, and then you like, oh, it depends, right? Not everybody can be as much as involved. But like, if someone asks me advice or something, I write a text like this. And, well, don't I mean, it depends on the day, of course, but usually I'm very I usually reply stuff as and I like to help. So I'm what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of people that want to help, and then just the opportunity doesn't arrive to be this, so yeah, that's it.
That is interesting, because essentially it's talking about like consistency, and like if you consistently like try to connect with people, like there's a larger chance that we do connect with someone who can mentor us or provide us with the answers that we're looking for. All
Yeah.
right,
Also, one last thing. Like I said about this, my mentor, like I met him I think 7 years ago, and like frequently, like if I stay like a year without talking to him is already a lot. So from month, like in 3-4 months, I send him a message. I talk to him. I tell him what's going on with my professional life, and then he gives me a book to read or something. I mean, I am reaching to him, right? I'm not expecting him to talk to me. I am proactively talking to him to see if he can give me some advice and stuff. So, yeah.
that's great. So Khuyen, I would like to go to you and like ask your thoughts on like what strategies or techniques does one use to stay up to date with the latest trends and developments in the field?
Yeah. So this is an interesting question. Personally, I think that you shouldn't try to get up to date with everything. And the reason why I said that is if for example, if you're interested in the data science field, right? And you want to get up to date with everything in data science, that's impossible, because the field that's every day there are new tools, there's new research papers, and to get up to date with everything, you're gonna get crazy. And I don't, it's not, and it's not gonna stick. It's not an efficient way to use your time. I think you should identify, hey, it doesn't need to be a long period of time. Let's say this few months, I like to focus on this topic and I want to learn more about it. And for me, I'm very interested in ML ops, and some open source tools to our write efficient Python code. So that's what I focus on, and that's what I like to learn more. And the platform that I use to get up to date to personally, I like tools, open source tools. So the way for me to get up to date with cool tools is I follow a lot of people who do great work in the field on GitHub, or people who also curious like me, want to learn about other, so they start a lot of the open source libraries. I follow those people. So I have a GitHub feed of where I can see which repositories that they start. And from there, I discover new repositories and see what's trending. I also read a variety of books on the topic that I am interested in. And instead of trying to read from cover to cover, I only read the part that I am interested in, try something with it, and then basically move on to another book. And that's a way that I can learn a variety of things about the thing I'm interested in a short amount of time. And I also do tons of projects about the topics that I am interested in. And as I do those, I also learn more about the efficient ways to do something.
Thanks for answering that, Khuyen. And again, you gave us some really interesting tips of following the people that you look up to on GitHub, and what all repositories they start, and the tips that you gave for reading books. I think they're really great and interesting tips and great takeaways. I would like to now go to Glenn for his thoughts on this question. Oh, you're muted, Glenn.
Yeah, I'm always on mute. So this is another excellent question. Personally, in my career, I often have my head down, buried in my work, and I spend more time focusing on my tasks than sort of looking over my shoulder and seeing what the competition is up to. That's important too, but I've found that if you spend too much time, and especially if you focus on, say, some of the market leaders, you start to worry about the gap between yourself and them and whatever cool tool you're making and whatever else is out there, and you might become a bit overwhelmed. And I think you should really focus on your own improvements. So you should look at yourself, who you were yesterday, and take a look at what you've accomplished in the last day and how you've grown. And that way you'll develop more self-confidence, and it'll give you the tools to keep developing in the future. It's important to stay informed, of course, of the market. I don't actively do a lot of research. I don't even read a lot of research papers. I sort of wait for the best stuff to sift to the top and read the news every once in a while. So if it shows up at the top of Google News, it's probably worth taking a look at. But besides that, most of my day is just extremely busy engaging with the users and developing the tools that we have. So I think the focus should really be on yourself and on your own improvement and the path that you've taken.
And that's really interesting, Glenn. And I really like your tip of Google News. I keep my mind turned off, so I'll turn it on after this session. So thanks for that insight. I'll move on to the next question for our panelists, which is, what role does social media play in building a personal brand? And what are some best practices for using social media effectively? Marcelo, can we start with you?
Sure. Well, actually, I think the only social media that, well, not the only, but maybe LinkedIn can help us all. But I think what helped me a lot those years was creating my Twitter account. And I created with the only goal of getting up to date with the Python world. So, and it keeps having the same effect till now. So my Twitter account only has Python related stuff. So all my feed is full of Python stuff. So I get to know a lot of stuff from it. And also, since I follow people that are on this world and I am on this world, people follow me back. And then, well, that's how it helps to build my personal brand, right? And yeah, some best practices for using it effectively. I think I really try to focus on a specific subject that I would like. For example, I'm only using Twitter for Python related stuff. I don't have anything else that is not like that. So my feed, I can only see things that are really on this subject. And this might sound a bit, not sure if it's rude or if it doesn't make sense. I don't know how do you want to put it, but I really only follow people that I know they're involved with some projects. Like I don't follow back because you are following me. I really follow you. Like if you have some content that, so we're talking about effectively, right? So I only will follow things that people that really will give me something that I can learn from. Like if I have some, because the feed is huge, so and I need to optimize my time. So if I see many tweets that doesn't make sense for what I want, and that's the reason I use Twitter, is to learn and get up to date and to not lose that much time. So you try to know what you want to see there. That's basically what I'd say.
Those are some really insightful tips, Marcelo, about like how we are like how you're like making sure that you are only getting the content that you want to subscribe to, right? So that's really insightful.
Yeah.
And,
also, sorry. One thing about that. Sometimes that can be a bit tricky because, like, I'm not sure in Twitter, but sometimes if you are too focused on some specific thing, you may get a bit, not sure what's the word in English, alienated. I don't know if that's word in English, but you lose things from outside that you could get things from. So this might be a bit tricky to know what is that you want to follow. So this can be like double-edged knife, you know.
Definitely. So I would like to. So Khuyen, I'm curious about your thoughts on this question of like how can social media be used for creating a personal brand, and what are some practices that we can use to use it effectively?
Yeah, of course. And I just want to have a comment on what Marcelo say. I agree with. I like your strategy. And I also think that it's good to figure out the balance between exploration and exploitation, right? You don't want to, you want to exploit a topic that you want, but you don't want to go too deep that you know well everything around you. So to answer this question, I think for social media, if you can say the same thing in fewer words, then do that, because nowadays, people in social media, people are busy and their attention span is very short. So try to deliver what you want to say in few words, even if it does sound. I think a lot of people try to say something in complicated words because they think that will make them sound smarter, but in a way that's kind of not good for social media, because people like to read something comprehensive in a short amount of time. And another thing is, as you build your personal brand, you're not gonna have tons of followers, or you're not gonna have tons of likes right away. So, and some posts might do better than another. So if you frequently check your notifications, you might be disappointed and feel discouraged to share the next thing. So the strategy that I use at the beginning when I share my articles, right? Some articles doing viral, some articles doing very, very bad. And because I keep checking the statistics, I feel discouraged, and it makes it harder for me to publish the next article. So the strategy that I am adopting right now is only checking, let's say, LinkedIn once per day, because so I only check it after I publish the next post, so I don't feel discouraged by the last post. Maybe some people don't need that, but I I can be affected by those things. So I try to create a system that so that I'm not affected by the external things. And as you post your content, as it gets popular, you will see some comments that are not very pleasant, and that's okay. I think it's better to please a small subset of audience than to try to please everybody. Because if you just try to please everybody, write something that people already know, then it's not really, it's not your brand anymore. It's just you talk about things that are already out there. And the last thing is to diversify your social media presence. If you already on Twitter, maybe you should try LinkedIn. And if you already on LinkedIn, you should try Twitter or other platforms. For me, LinkedIn works very well. Twitter is doing okay, but I found that I have a much bigger audience on LinkedIn. My posts resonate more with LinkedIn audience. So just try different things. Some might work, some might not work, but at least there will be some that work.
That's really insightful, Khuyen. Like you were talking about how you're customizing your systems so that you get the most out of your social media use. And those are like some really great tips. So now we are nearing the end of our panel, and I have this last question for the group. So Glenn, I know you have experience with open source and contributing to it. So what are some common mistakes individuals make in the process of contributing? And what advice can you give to someone who is just starting out? I know that you did delve into it a little bit earlier, but if you want to share some pitfalls or like from your personal experiences that people can avoid.
Yeah, this is a great question also. I'd have two pieces of advice. So the very first one is to not expect an immediate return. And so this, again, is like other things in life. Like if you go to the gym, you lift a bunch of weights for one day and you look in the mirror and you're like, wow, I haven't gotten in shape. You know, I just give up. You're not going to get very far. And the same is true on your open source adventures and your coding adventures. Like you really need to work for many months, maybe even a year plus, without really an expectation of return. And I think if you can do that, then, and if you can focus really on the work and on the progress that you make day to day, then I think eventually rewards will come to you. And the second one is that you should not focus on the rewards themselves. So ideally, you're probably creating a project with the hopes that someone's going to use it, that it'll make someone's life better, that you can generate some revenue from it. And I think if you focus the conversation and your thought process on how this tool that you're building can be useful for other people, how you can help other people use this, then I think tangential rewards, like maybe business contracts or revenue, will naturally follow that. So I think if you directly pursue a business success, it's going to be hard to come by. But if you create a tool that's very useful, that a lot of people find useful, then I think as a natural consequence of that success, then I think the business success will trail that. So I think keeping those two things in mind, and of course, with a little bit of hard work and maybe some luck, I think you can do almost anything that you want.
Thank you, Glenn, for sharing those advice. And moving on to Khuyen, I would love to know your thoughts for that.
Yeah, this is a great question. And just a quick comment on what Glenn said. I think I agree. We shouldn't focus too much on instant gratification because reward will be, for example, as a content creator, the reward for me is, the number of views, and sometimes it go up and down, but it should comes from within. Are you interested in this topic? It should be something that you're interested in. So even when people, you don't really have a lot of reward from external, you still have reward from internal. And so to answer the questions, I think some common mistake that individual make is that they think that they need to have a PhD degree about a topic to share about that topic. I got asked that questions a lot. So I often just tell people, hey, you don't need a PhD to talk about this topic, because in a way, if you are a beginner and you share about something, it might be better than a PhD share about something, because as you become an expert in something, you might not be aware of some of the concepts that might be difficult for beginners. So if you learn about something, you share about it right away, your content will be more likely to resonate with people who just learn about the topic. And another thing is, don't try to be right all the time, right? Sometimes think about sharing content as a way for you to journal your progress, journal your knowledge, to share, hey, this is my opinion. It might not be true, but this is my opinion. It will make you to seem more authentic than try to write something that is definitely right. And the last thing is, don't think of success as an upward slope, right? It's sometimes it will go down, sometimes it will go up, and that is okay. It's a part of the journey. I think the slope will kind of increase over a long period of time, but if you look at the slope in a short period of time, it will, go up and down. And you can only see the upward slope if you do something for a long period of time.
Thank you, Khuyen, for those valuable advice that you gave. And Marcelo, like, moving on to you, would love to know your thoughts for the same.
Yeah, so while Glenn was talking, he was actually stealing a bit of my answer on that. I do think that people do have a lot of expectations at the beginning. Like, I see a lot of, when you're starting open source, you create a pull request and then you keep asking if that pull request it's a good idea and stuff, and you keep pinging there. Then, well, I guess this is one part of the answer, but I think what I've seen the last years is that people just give up. So, well, not only on open source, right? On everything that you want to improve, sometimes there is something that happens outside that influences you to give up, or even yourself don't keep motivated enough to do, like, not only on open source, but everything in life, I think. But putting it on open source things, I think you just need to enjoy the journey, right? Try to do step by step, as I said. Try to enjoy the learning process, and don't see that as you don't need to do that. You don't need to do open source to get stuff, like to get visibility, to get a better job. Do that because you like that, because you are getting something from it. You are learning more. You are, I don't know, you are curious about that, and you get to meet new people. Like, for example, that doing open source gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people that are extremely smart. And honestly, I'm not that smart. I am very dedicated. I did the same thing over a lot of time, so I learned a lot because of that. I have a huge baggage of hours on some topics, so that's why I know a lot of that stuff. But I don't consider myself super smart. I just have a lot of time dedicated to the stuff that I like, and I think that's also what puts people down. Like, people think that there are super smart people in some field, and they just dedicate a lot of time, so that they know that stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, Marcelo. And we come to the end of our panel discussion. It was great. Like, I personally had a lot of takeaways from all of you, and I'm pretty sure that our audiences would also have it. Unfortunately, we are right on time, so we won't be able to take all the audience questions, but I'll try to take 2 of them. So the first audience question is, what markers, attitudes, and other identifying characteristics would Glenn and Marcelo say indicate an excellent programmer? knowledge, skills, behavior, etc. And Khuyen, if you want to pitch in, please feel free to do so.
I guess okay, so I would say you have to be curious, and it's been mentioned a few times here, but you have to love what you do. You have to be very passionate about it. And if this is your source of income, then you shouldn't really consider it a job. You should consider it doing something that you'd be doing anyways. And I think when you can do that, you'll be pretty happy. And I think you'll be passionate about what you're doing. So I think being willing to just jump in, to start, to chase something that you love rather than settle for something that you're not quite interested in, I think are definitely two of the keys to success. And of course, perseverance and hard work, but those apply equally in any other domain in life, not just coding.
Does any other panelist want to share their thoughts on the question?
Yeah, I guess. I think, can I talk?
Yeah, yes, of course.
Yeah, so I think, well, there is only one thing that's in my mind right now, and I think it's Google skills. It might sound a joke, but I think I see a characteristic of good developers is that, well, I think on myself as well. And I think well, it might sound a bit silly, but if you have good Google skills, you save a lot of time. So it's not about knowing how, yeah, it's exactly knowing how to type what you want to search. So you lose less time, because actually I think most of the time you spend, like coding, you spend on Google and trying to find information. So, well, now ChatGPT as well, but I guess knowing what to ask is important. So try to be more, pay more attention to that.
Thank you so much for answering that question. Then final audience question for today would be, how long do you have to wait before starting to search for a job? And should we build several projects first before we start searching for a job or apply for it?
I can answer this question. I think, okay, that's very interesting. So my journey came from, I applied for over 100 jobs in data science, right? When I first started, and I got nothing back. But when I start to share my knowledge with the world, I don't need to apply all the jobs I'm having. It's actually just from my connections on LinkedIn. So that's my personal experience. I do think that you shouldn't wait until the perfect time to apply for jobs. So there are two things that if you are looking for a job right now, you should do both, working on your project and apply for jobs. And maybe actually before applying for jobs, talk to people, like come back to the previous question, right? Networking. I think networking is so important to find a job. A lot of time, you job post, a lot of companies, they don't hire through job posting. They connect with the people that they know and ask them if they are interested in specific job. So doing three things. First, work on projects you're interested in. Secondly, talk to people, just talk to a variety of people that in the field and they doing something cool and you like to learn more about them. And the third thing is to apply for jobs, make it like 10%, 20% of the whole pipeline. I think for me, that's what works.
Thank you for sharing that, Khuyen. And those were like great tips. Does any other panelist want to pitch in?
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, I think, well, one thing that I think it would have been helpful if people told me at the beginning is that you really need, I mean, you don't need to, but if you show interest for a specific role, it's more likely that you'll get it. So I think what got me the job here in France was that like the last interview, at least, or one of the interviews was with the CEO. And I remember myself seeing all his videos on talks and this kind of stuff. So I spent a bit of time dedicating to understand the person that I was going to talk to. So on the call that I had with him, I kind of praised him, and actually I talked to the subject. I talked with the subject that I talked about the subjects that he was talking on those talks. So yeah, I mean, we get this feeling, and then I got the job. So I think that helps.
That was really insightful. Thank you for sharing that, Marcelo. I guess we can end our panel here if there's nothing else that the panelists want to like share for now. So I guess we'll end it. And I can see there are a lot of appreciation and for all our panelists. And so we did have a lot of questions. So would the panelists be comfortable sharing any kind of social media handle where the audiences could connect with them or ask their questions or anything?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can find me at the YOLO V5 GitHub. If you just go to Google and you type YOLO V5, it'll be the top link, or Ultralytics, and I'm always there answering all kinds of questions.
All right, and I see that the other panelists have shared their links in the chat box, so the audiences can find that. And I am really grateful for all the panelists for taking out their time and just coming here and having a chat with me and sharing their thoughts. And I learned a lot, and I hope the audiences had a great time listening to them as well. And also, I would like to applaud Ashmi, who's our volunteer at Women Who Code, for being a great moderator throughout this session. So yes, again, thank you so much for joining us all. And I hope to see you all, the audiences, in the next Women Who Code event. So till then, see you. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
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 Mm.